Can you hear us, Nick? We
All right.
are
Now I
live.
can hear you. Yes.
Okay, good. We're live here at the Mysterious Bookshop. I'm Otto Penzler, and I have one function tonight. And fortunately, it's a simple one and a joyous one. I get to introduce our two guests. On one side of the screen is Steve Rothman, who is the editor of the Baker Street Journal and arguably the greatest Sherlock Holmes scholar alive. And I'm very delighted to have him with us tonight because he is going to be in conversation with Nick Meyer, who is arguably the greatest writer alive of Sherlock Holmes pastiches. So once we have the greatest of everything on the screen, I don't see any function for me. So welcome, Stephen. Thank you, Nicholas, for being here, and welcome. And I'm now going to leave it to you to talk about your new book, which we are grateful to have. And Nick, I have to tell you, you let yourself in for something when you agreed to have us send books to you to sign. We send a lot of books to you, my friend. So I hope you're not going to find it overwhelming. But thank you for that. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Stephen and Nicholas.
Very good. Well, so Nick, you were at one point planning to read something, but I'm presuming it's not in the car, and we'll go without that. Yes?
It's not in the car. It's not in the cards. No, this is a snafu, as we say. But if you can hear me clearly, we can have a conversation.
We'll have a conversation. Would you like to be introduced in a formal way, or shall we just start chattering?
This is entirely up to you. As we used to say in show business, I'm just happy to be nominated.
Well, all right. We'll do it semi-formal. How's that? The mid-70s was famous for many things. Leaving Vietnam, Watergate, and the resurgence of Sherlock Holmes. Holmes was everywhere in those days, and much of that fame was due to our guest tonight, Nick Meyer. Nick and Sherlock have spent much of the time since then together. He gained public notice with the publication of his first novel, The 7% Solution, in 1974. Before that, he published a crime novel, Target Practice, which was nominated for an Edgar for Best First Novel, but lost to Fletch that year. I shall not mention his account of his time as a unit publicist for the Love Story. Does it count if I say that having read it means I never have to say I'm sorry? No. Okay.
Either that or you. Yes, let's leave it at that. Actually, I was the unit publicist on a movie called Love Story. It was my account of the movie making that was called The Love Story, not by me, I might add. But that was the title.
Yes, and I did read it, actually.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you. So the 7% Solution climbed to the bestseller list and stayed there for, over 40 weeks, Nick? Something like that.
40 weeks. Yes.
I
Did you just mysteriously drop out
for just a moment? Did I?
There you were back, and it was a pleasure.
Good. All right. This is all being a little bit awkward, but Nick, why don't we try some questions and we can just go from there? I think that'll be easier for both of us. So, well, most of us made bread or cleaned our closets. You wrote and published a novel. Was this your first idea for a pandemic project?
The idea was put into my head by my longtime agent, manager, and friend, Alan Gasmer, to whom the book is dedicated. he said to me, "What about Holmes in Egypt?" And that suggestion really primed my pump. I think since I was a kid, and I'm probably not the only kid to have been fascinated by movies and pictures of ancient Egypt, whether I was watching Land of the Pharaohs or reading about archaeology and Howard Carter. And I always had an interest in archaeology. The first screenplay I ever wrote was The Life of Heinrich Schliemann, the discoverer of Troy. And so, having had a kind of a long-standing, if passive, interest in things archaeological, and then seeing all those what we used to call spear and sandal movies, Valley of the Kings, Land of the Pharaohs, the Egyptian, the Spartacus, they all kind of ran together in my head. But the idea of putting Holmes in Egypt in 1911, when Egyptology as a new enthusiasm for the rich and privileged, many of whom went off to Egypt originally for their health, the dry, arid climate, and then got caught hunting. And one example of this was Lord Carnarvon, who I think went there after an automobile accident, and he hired a man named Howard Carter to supervise the digging efforts that he financed. And eventually, as we all know, in 1922, Carter discovered the only unopened tomb in all of Egypt, at least so far, that the tomb robbers for 3,000 years hadn't already got to, the tomb of a person, but famous for the treasures with which he was buried. And that, so when Alan made the suggestion, I thought, gee, what a cool idea. Holmes in Egypt seems like a natural.
All right. So, had you spent a lot of your weekend at the Met in the Egypt galleries as a boy?
Did any of that come through? I can't tell.
Okay, we're not hearing each other.
Hey, I loved going to the Met. Are you not hearing me?
Oh, we heard you, but
Are you not
know what I
hearing me?
might? We heard you, but if you'll forgive us, what I might try for a moment is to
Can
turn
you not
off your video.
hear me?
We hear you, but I may just turn off your video for a moment with audio only to then see if the conversation is a little smoother. I didn't just do that yet, but that's what I'm going to try right now. Because I hope the audience could hear. I heard his response. It just seems
Well,
a
I've
little
turned off
choppy.
my camera. Does that help?
Oh, okay. Well, that's what I was about to do.
Okay. Well, this is fun. So, so Nick, I don't know if anyone heard, because I couldn't understand your last answer when I asked if you'd spent a lot of weekends.
Is that any better?
A little, not a lot. But keep talking.
Whether I'd spent weekends in the Met. At the Met. Can you hear me?
I can hear you when you say, "Can I hear you?" But the rest of it.
Can you hear? Well, what I said was, as a kid, I used to love the Egyptian armor. So why is that so difficult? Why is it so difficult to hear me?
Now I can hear you fine. As we're having our little seance.
Is that any
yes,
better?
much.
I don't know what that's all about. I went to the Met as a kid. I loved the Egyptian. I loved the Temple of Dendur. For that matter, I loved all the armor in the medieval section. So a lot of my interest in things historical, I think, was encouraged by those trips to the Met. Ultimately, in 1979, I went to Egypt and spent a lot of spent time in Alexandria and Cairo, and I went inside the Great Pyramid, which you go in through the robber's entrance, which is very small, and if you are claustrophobic, don't do it. But all that sort of background in Egypt uh, certainly fertilized the writing of this book. Did any of that come through?
Not the last part. After the fertilized.
Did any of that come through?
Only a little bit.
That was it. That was fertilized the writing of this book. So yeah, it was. I went to Egypt. I spent time in Egypt. I was inside the Great Pyramid. You go in through the robber's entrance.
Great. So we're getting a first.
And I got out again.
So we have a first-person account of this then when Watson is telling us about going through the robber's entrance. This is what you experienced and saw.
Absolutely true. Absolutely true. That is exactly based on my. Say again?
I said it filled me with terror. I'm glad that it was you and not me. I wouldn't have wanted to do it.
I think I didn't want to do it once I was in it, but you can't back out because there's people behind you. There's no turning around. All the things that Watson observes in that section of the book.
Ha! That's just.
Shall we try putting me on camera again, or does nobody care?
Let's try. I don't think it's any worse. If Tom disagrees, he'll pop in and try again. So it's more fun to see you than to talk to a black screen.
Voila.
Thank you. So when you started out, were you aware that Conan Doyle had been to Egypt? Well, I think twice, but the most recent time was in 1895 with his wife, where he had taken Tui there for her health. Not unlike Watson and his wife.
You know, you've blindsided me. I completely forgot or didn't know that. How fitting. How he took Louise there.
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that, or I didn't remember it, or I certainly didn't consciously remember it. I'm tempted to say great minds think alike, but that may be giving one of us too much credit.
I think it made me very happy when I was thinking that you took the creature to the same place as the creator. So I liked it. I was giving you enormous credit. So. But that's
always take it. That's the first thing you learn in Hollywood.
No. So it wasn't just let's take Sherlock Holmes to the pyramids. It was slightly let's take Sherlock Holmes to the pyramids, but it was more let's take Sherlock Holmes to the pyramids and see what will happen. Did you think of this as an adventure book, as a spy novel? Which it's sort of both. And
well, it's really weird. There may be some people, some writers, who are extremely organized in mapping out the plots of their stories. I began with the idea of why does Holmes go to Egypt? Why does Watson go to Egypt? The Watson thing probably came first. Why does he bump into Holmes? Holmes is there searching for a missing nobleman, and has been hired by the nobleman's estranged wife to find out what has become of him, because he's gone AWOL, and so it just seemed like um, a logical thing. And then I began thinking about who this nobleman was and what had brought him to Egypt. It couldn't be his health. That was Watson's wife was there because of her health. And one of the things that did fascinate me and continues to fascinate me is the whole Egyptomania that gripped well-to-do people, some of whom were more responsible about their hobby than others. Um, the French composer Saint-Saëns spent time in Egypt. Flaubert spent time in Egypt. Um, it was the place to go at a certain point. And certainly the lure of buried treasure did not only afflict Egyptologists, but also people like Lord Elgin, who went to Athens and scooped up pieces of the Parthenon and took them back to the British Museum. A kind of looting, which may have these people may have convinced themselves it was rescue work, that they were saving these things from destruction, which in many cases, some of them arguably were. But today, places like the Getty and the Met, they have to give back a lot of stuff.
It's true. A lot of stuff. So your pictures of your word pictures of the museum and the offices and Carter's office and the other archaeologist's office, things. Is this based on photographs from the time? Is this based on your research, or is this just something that you decided to offer to us?
It's a museum. In 1979, I'm sure it's changed, whether for the better or the worse. I don't know. I certainly looked at photographs, of which there's no shortage. I even heard recently, actually, I've even heard Howard Carter's speaking voice, and I'm glad I sort of got that right. He was not of, as the English would say, he wasn't of the right class, and he was a sort of self-taught guy who did become an autodidact and an expert on ancient Egypt. But he also got himself into trouble a lot of times because he was an arbitrary sort of guy. And at Saqqara, he found himself feuding with some French tourists that he felt were desecrating or doing something they shouldn't have been to the ruins. And so he got himself booted out of the Department of Antiquities, which also, as you know, figures in the story.
So your Holmes here is really an action Holmes. He's climbing up a wall. He's burrowing through pyramids. I don't even want to describe the final scene, but he's saving people on a train. He's doing all sorts of things, and he's not a young man. Of course, it's 1911, so if we take our traditional thought that Sherlock Holmes was born in 54, he's in his late 50s then. And yet, he's a different Holmes than the one you first introduced in 7% Solution. Is this because he's
I'm not sure. I'm not sure I agree. I'm not sure I agree. First of all, he's still deducing. He immediately asks Watson if his wife is okay. He figures out everything about Monsieur Charpentier without giving any spoilers. But Doyle, it seems to me, always emphasized that he was quite an athlete, a boxer, a single stick player. And he certainly is an action hero in the locomotive chase. That's the climax of the 7% Solution. So I'm not sure that I'm deviating either from myself or Doyle, although maybe more action has crept in. I wasn't self-conscious about it, which is to say, I guess I wasn't aware that I was breaking new ground. I wasn't trying to break new ground. I was just trying to, and certainly you used the word a little while ago. You said this was an adventure story, and I think it is an adventure story. I think if you go to Egypt in 1911 and you're searching for a missing nobleman and you're poking your head inside tombs, then yeah, there's an element of, H. Rider Haggard, King Solomon's Mines, Treasure Island, all of that stuff, which was part of the literature certainly that Doyle read. And he did have a high-speed speedboat chase down the Thames in The Sign of the Four, as I recollect. So I didn't think I was entirely going astray, but maybe other people think differently.
I didn't think. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to imply you were going astray. I just was enjoying the side of Holmes as well as the detective side, and you showed both of them. But I felt that, that your Holmes was.
Well, maybe I've seen one too many Robert Downey.
No, a lot of physical activity. He's showing a lot of physical activity, especially in the last, say, third of the book.
It's part of, I guess, something else that I think that one of the things that seems to, again, to use that phrase, prime my pump, is getting him out of England. With the exception of the West End horror, all my Holmes adventures take place either on the continent or in Asia, in Russia, or now in North Africa. There's something about making him a fish out of water, out of Thames water, you might say, that seems to at least free me up to not sort of do the same old good and familiar Holmes. I want him to be familiar enough that we enjoy being in his company, but in circumstances sufficiently outre, as he would probably describe them, where it's completely different, if that makes any sense, where he has to grapple with what is unfamiliar.
Yeah, because I noticed that, and I was thinking about that. In fact, I have a question where I was going to ask you that it seemed to me that you're always taking Holmes away from Baker Street, and well, here we don't see him in Baker Street at all. And it was, I thought it was a wonderful thing because I hadn't really thought about that even 2 years ago when I was reading the Protocols, as much as I was enjoying your time in Russia. But this time I thought, we don't see them really in England at all. And I was loving having Holmes free. This scene on the train was a wonderful thing, where he's he's truly being a hero there, and that's the only word to describe it. And I just was, I know when I say this is a cinematic book, you're just going to nod sagely and say, what do I expect from a screenwriter and a director? But it is a very cinematic book, and possibly your most cinematic book. And I'm hoping that you can talk someone else into believing that it's a cinematic book, because it would look fantastic on screen.
Well, it's interesting. I guess, and I would hope. I don't. There may be so much Sherlock Holmes out there that another Sherlock Holmes movie, another Sherlock Holmes TV, it's a glut on the market. I think in the opinion of people out here. When I wrote the 7% solution, I had very little in the way of competition. There were other Holmes imitations, but not a lot. And by the way, just to digress for a moment, this word pastiche has always kind of rankled. I call them novels. I don't call them pastiches any more than I would call the Odyssey or the Aeneid a pastiche. All art is a history of cut and paste. And as Michael Chabon said, all fiction is fan fiction. The Odyssey is a spin-off of the Iliad with some of the same characters, as is the Aeneid. But no one's calling it a pastiche. And it's become a pejorative term. There weren't a lot of pastiches when I published the 7% solution. Now, if I tried to read them all, I would grow old before I ever got through them, because there are so many. And some of them are terrific. I don't read most of them, only because I'm afraid of my own inferiority complex, so I kind of stay away. But I know that whether you're talking about Sherlock with Benedict Cumberbatch, or Elementary with Johnny Lee Miller, or Robert Downey, or whoever, and all these other novels, the idea that this might become a film, as cinematically appealing as I think we agree it is, seems like a long shot to me. I'd certainly be happy to write the screenplay of it. I'd be happy to direct it, for that matter. But I think it's up against a lot of odds, is how I would term it.
I don't know anything about the movie making business other than to sit down, eat my popcorn, and enjoy what's on the screen. So I'll bow to you.
Absolutely.
And
a movie without popcorn is like a day without sunshine.
Although I've missed the movies, and I'm hoping that sometime soon I will return to them, but I haven't yet. And I don't know what you're doing, but
I have. I've
Good.
been back.
And well, you should. But
I've been back. It's fun, and popcorn and movies are unbeatable.
But so now with this book, with this your fifth Sherlock Holmes novel, plus a screenplay, you've probably written more words about Sherlock Holmes than Conan Doyle ever did, and you've been writing them for longer than he did, because it was about 40 years that from his start to finish for him, and you're past that. And so how does that
I hope I'm not past.
past the
I hope I'm
40 years. Yeah.
Yes, I understand that. I wanted to say there's a distinction between being past that and being past it. Anyway, keep going.
So how does that make you feel about having probably put in more energy into your Sherlock Holmes than Conan Doyle put into his Sherlock Holmes, or both of your Sherlock Holmes, however.
Well, Doyle's relationship to Holmes, as I think we all know, was ambivalent to say the least. It was his way into literary and financial success, but he had bigger ambitions, whether we're talking about his science fiction, and we know he created the first King Kong version, the Lost World with dinosaurs on the plateau in South America, or what he lavished even more attention and research on, his medieval and historical romances, whether you're talking about Rodney Stone or the White Company, Sir Nigel. These were more important to him. And so, and he was sort of curiously obtuse about Holmes's appeal. And when he got a bill from his tailor addressed to Sir Sherlock Holmes, he didn't think it was funny. And he kept sort of trying to kill him off, as we know, and wouldn't stay dead. I don't have those other venues. Holmes, I'm not writing the White Company. I'm not writing Rodney Stone, or those sort of Raphael Sabatini historical romances. Although one is tempted, or I should say, I am tempted. No, I just do this, and I do it when I get an idea for it, or someone gives me an idea, the way Alan Gasmer gave me an idea, Holmes in Egypt. The Adventure of the Peculiar Protocols came about, that was almost my own idea when I stumbled onto the Protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion, and I thought, wow, this is really weird stuff, and I wonder what Sherlock would do, etc. And if I don't have an idea for a Sherlock Holmes thing, then I don't write it. 26 years between the Canary Trainer and the Protocols, I think, because just nothing quite grabbed me. And it's good when it won't let you go. And weirdly enough, I have an idea for another Holmes book. I have no idea whether Minotaur Books is, it depends whether this is a success or not, I suppose, whether they would want to commission another one.
Well, let's hope so. For my reading's sake, anyway, because I've enjoyed these last two, this return to Sherlock Holmes. I think that you've been painting interesting pictures, telling us new things about the time. I even enjoyed your footnotes, where you've gone into series of 6 pilcrows or 6 double daggers and asterisks by the end. You had so many footnotes that I was losing count. I couldn't count the little marks, but I was having fun with that and reading this.
It's interesting. I can't make up my mind whether the footnotes are a good idea or not. In the 7% solution, I think they were good because they were funny. Now I think they tend to be more informational, and I'm not sure that's as good. And certainly when we did the audio version of the book, when David Robb read the audio version, I was doing the footnotes, and I cut a lot of them out because I found them intrusive to his very compelling narrative voice. I didn't want to hear me explaining when Celsius was brought in over Fahrenheit in England and stuff like that.
I can understand. I think for an audiobook they would be difficult. Since I don't read audiobook listen to audiobooks. I don't think about them that way and how they might possibly work. Just being greedy that way. So do you feel now with these 5 books and this screenplay that you have, is there a Nick Meyer canon Sherlock Holmes as opposed to an Arthur Conan Doyle canon Sherlock Holmes? Do you feel that you've created somebody who is a consistent Holmes through these books?
What a great question. It's funny. I think that in a kind of egocentric way, I longed to have my books included in a Holmesian chronology. But clearly there's so many other ones that some of them have different chronologies, and as I say, some of them one suspects are better than mine. I don't quite know the answer to this. I would love, let's put it this way, when everybody gets to the end of Doyle's 60 stories, when we get to the end of those stories, we all wish that they would continue, that we want more. And that's why people keep writing them.
Yeah.
And all I can hope for is that the ones that I've done are at least somewhat capable of satisfying that desire. That's the best I can hope for, I think. If that makes any sense.
Absolutely makes sense, because if you can create a continuation that satisfies even part of the market, then you can be proud of yourself and say, I've made my mark on Sherlock Holmes. And Sherlock Holmes by now, I'm sure, has certainly made his mark on you.
Well, I think, I'm as I age, which seems to be happening, I ask myself, what kind of artist am I? And Tolstoy said the purpose of art is to teach you to love life, and which I think is probably a good headline. But I think art can do other things. It can help you endure life, and it can help you to escape life. And I think we all must acknowledge that the times that we live in are parlous indeed. They are frightening. They are discouraging. They are terrifying. You can put any of those words in, and I think sometimes what art can do is give you breathing space. You just get to take an hour or two in the movies, or a couple of hours at night with a book. You curl up with something and you escape. And after that, you are refreshed, one hopes, refreshed, and you are ready to go back and do battle with reality. But I think that, I'm not writing Anna Karenina. I'm not doing Proust. I'm not Philip Roth. I'm just trying to provide people with a little respite. And if my Holmes stories or any of my other stuff does that, that's good. That's what I will settle for.
Okay. Well, we're beginning to run to the point of where they want us to start opening up things to questions that have been coming in over the transom. But I wanted to ask one last question, really, Nick. So you're a member of the Baker Street Irregulars. Otto's a member of the Baker Street Irregulars. I'm a member of the Baker Street Irregulars. And so as the editor of their journal, and I'm going to hold this up now, an issue that was devoted entirely to 7% Solution, something that I'm proud of editing, and I'm sure you're proud of as just a landmark in your career. Do you feel
Very proud, extremely proud.
Excellent. Good answer. Do you feel that what we call the Sherlockian commentary, what we call the writings on the writings, has helped or hindered you in your trying to get your handle on Holmes over the years in any way?
There's no question that there's no question that it has inspired me. It was my discovery back in 1972 when I first stumbled onto a non-Sherlock Holmes story that was, written by someone else. And it wasn't a story, it was a series of essays named Trevor Hall that sort of opened the floodgates. All these writings about the writings, Holmes and women, Holmes and music, Holmes and Tibet, and on and on and on, that proved to be indispensable to creating the 7% solution and everything that followed. Where would I be without the Baker Street Journal, for heaven's sake, putting aside the single issue devoted, to Mrs. Meyer's oldest? It was really crucial.
Well, that's great. I'm very glad.
It was crucial.
That makes me very happy. Should we conclude with just a compulsory literary interview question? Like, what are you reading now, or what books are on your nightstand, sort of thing? Feel like you're talking to the New York Times this way?
You're gonna laugh when you're gonna laugh when I tell you, and I'm laughing when I tell you. It's like closing the stable door after the horse has bolted. I'm reading a nonfiction book called The Discovery of the Lost Tomb. And this is K5, written by an archaeologist named Kent Weeks. It was published in the late 90s, but I found it by chance on somebody's shelf and grabbed it. And this was Kent Weeks, very interested in Egypt, and then he never lost and he became a PhD, and he went to Harvard, and he went to Yale, and he spent year after year after year, all through the 80s and the 90s, digging in Egypt. And he found the biggest tomb they ever found, K5, which is the tomb for all the sons of Ramses II.
Ha.
And why am I reading this after the book is finished? I don't know. It's like playing with an amputated limb.
Well, it just shows that you had a genuine interest, as you said at the beginning. So I think it's great. I'm glad that you're continuing to spend some of your time in Egypt. Do you hope to get back there now that you can travel again?
And I keep learning stuff, and I go, I don't know that I mean, Egypt is a dictatorship. I'm not sure that I relish the prospect, but what's funny is I read stuff and I said, oh, that should be in the book, in the revised edition.
All right. So I think we're going to open up in the revised edition. That'll be good. I'm looking forward to the revised edition. Because I have nothing to do with my time except to read Sherlock Holmes. So once again, we're talking with Nicholas Meyer, who just yesterday, I'm trying to hold this up right. How's that? Issued The Return of the Pharaoh, a wonderful book.
Little higher.
Return of the Pharaoh from Minotaur Books. And
perfect.
You can get it from signed copies. You can order from the Mysterious Bookshop, which would be very happy if you did. So now, do we have any questions? And I think we do.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Nicholas.
We'll find out
Steven.
if any could hear any of this.
Well, no. So I can put the questions on the screen. I typed this into the chat, but maybe people weren't watching the chat. Please type your questions in, audience members, just in case you two, are possibly doubtful. We have a robust audience watching. I've just only got 1 or 2 questions so far. So we'll start with this one.
All right, Nick, when do you think of Sherlock on film? Which actor do you think of? Did you hear me, Nick? No.
Well, I'll take myself out if perhaps having the 3 people on video, but as I said, please type your questions in and I'll plug them on screen as we have them.
All right. So, Nick, once again, when you think of Sherlock Holmes on film, which actor do you think of?
Well, movies, there have been probably over 400, so we're taking a lot of territory, and I'm most sure movie that always I seem to be like busting up. I don't know. Again, I don't know why.
Well, it's a long way from Los Angeles to New York.
Yeah, but I was advised, evidently incorrectly, about when this was happening, which I thought was tomorrow. And that really screwed up everything, because I was certainly ready for tomorrow. And this is
Well, you were doing pretty well for a while there. It was really easy to understand you, and just a tiny lag, which was not a big deal. Because the audience says that they can hear you just fine. You want to try to answer the question again? Is there a
obviously.
All right. Well, I think we've lost Nick.
Yes.
No, he's coming back.
It seems that we have. Well, no, this is me.
Oh, well.
It seems that he dropped off. If he's watching or does watch it, my apologies to Mr. Meyer. I triple checked my emails and everything, and this is what I'm supposed to be. So I'm really sorry wherever the wherever the miscommunication seems to have arisen, and I appreciate him valiantly trying to do it from presumably his phone, internet, and his car. I know that on my end I could hear most of the answers. There's the video that was a little bit choppy. So again, I apologize for the technical difficulties, but I hope that the audience could hear it as well as I could, because it did largely come through.
I want to thank you, Tom. I want to thank Otto, and I especially want to thank Nick. It was a lovely conversation. It's a lovely book. And once again, it's the Return of the Pharaoh. It's well worth buying, and Mysterious Bookshop will be delighted to fulfill any of your orders. And I want to thank all of you out there for tuning in, and maybe someday we'll be able to have a conversation where everybody can hear everyone.
Yes.
In a room then. But thank you all.
this is a tiny bit of my nightmare. Mercifully, our events have largely been free of any sort of technical mishaps. So again, my apologies to Mr. Meyer, but thank you so much, Steven. I apologize that we couldn't have some more questions, but that was a wonderful interview, and I believe actually though I appreciate you plugging the availability of Nicholas's book at the store, but also we should say the Baker Street,
The Baker Street Journal, if you go to bakerstreetirregulars.com, you can find out how to subscribe to the Baker Street Journal. This issue is no longer available, but you can start subscribing now and get it. We would be delighted. We are available. Older issues of the Baker Street Journal are probably available at the store.
Oh, yes.
And they usually are. And I know they would be delighted to send them to you. So thank you all for tuning in. Thank you, Tom. This was fun for me. I think it was fun for Nick. And I'm sorry it was a little frustrating for all of us. But take care. Good night.
Well, thank you all. And yes, thank you, Stephen. Good night.
Good night.